Welcome once again to Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggin, and what a night. What a night we got for you. We have got some ready to roll, and we've got some N scale, but let's do what we always do. To my right is you guys out there commenting. Let's see who's joining us tonight. We've got Gordon, Main Central Productions. We have Dave, George, Abel, Ibuprofen Dave. You got to send me some of that. Forrest, KBA, Eric, Steve, Jason, Terry, Mike, Jake here, Mike, Herc, Rocky Mountain Train Show's here. Wow, the whole train show is here. That's impressive. That's very impressive. Derek Glass is in the house. We've got Tim. We've got Ian, John, Jim, and Nicholas, just to name a few. Pretty good crowd here tonight. And hey, you know what? It's the middle of February. What better thing to do in the middle of February? Work on the layout, work on your models, work on something, and have Train Tuesday playing in the background. A lot of neat stuff. We're going to talk about HO and N scale this week, and just some really cool stuff that we're offering. And we've got pictures this time of those items, so you get a pretty good idea. If you're new to the show or new to Athern, we'll give you an idea of what these products look like. Now, everything that we're going to show tonight is for pre-order. That means you have until next Friday, yes, next Friday, the 25th, to get in touch with your dealer and pre-order anything that we're about to talk about tonight. And don't forget to, we've got some GP18s in this month for pre-order, and we also have some GP50s, some really cool stuff. So let's see who else is out there and get the show rolling. We've got Mark, Frederick, Ron, Steve, Joseph, and who else do I have here? Ron, Mr. Jim Straka, Jamie, and Late Night Model Railroad's here. He's saying, yeah, GPs. All right, cool. Yeah, we've got some cool stuff that's coming up. Anthony and Christopher. So let's do what we always do. Let's go ahead and put down the hobby knife, get comfortable in our workshop chair, and grab the beverage of your choice, and let's get started with Train Tuesday. Now, like I was saying at the very beginning of the show, we're going to be talking HO and N scale, and we're offering something really cool this month, and it is per diem boxcars, and they're going to be available in both HO and N. And it's a pretty interesting period of railroad history. Now, myself included, and a lot of you guys out there modeled the 1970s, and we're seeing a lot of you guys and a lot of the surveys that you send in to us, we're seeing a lot of guys modeling the 1970s, 1980s, and the 1990s. So this release is going to be of pretty important to you. So let's bring ahead the per diem cars. Now, one thing I want to let you guys know is everything that I'm showing you here tonight as far as the per diem box cars is available in HO and N, and we'll talk a little bit about those specifically in the next few minutes. So like I was saying, the 1970s, interesting time. What was happening was a lot of the box cars that had been manufactured in the 50s and 60s, well, like anything, maintenance was required. Some of these box cars were getting beat up pretty good. And let's not forget, the 1970s wasn't exactly the golden age of freight operations here in the United States. They came an idea of coming up with a per diem boxcar program. Now, briefly, and I won't go into details, there's a lot of information online. If you've never heard of the per diem boxcar of the 1970s, go ahead and do a quick wiki online. You'll get all the complete details. But briefly, what that meant was, in the old days, a boxcar would be sent full to a destination, and then when it was emptied, it went back to its owner's railroad. So if it was a C&O boxcar, once it was unloaded, it went back to the C&O property. If you look at some of the boxcars from the 50s and 60s, you'll even see stenciling right beside the door that says, when empty, return to. And it would be the name of the owner's yard. So that was pretty standard practice. But there were some companies, TTX was one of them, and of course, SSI Industries was another one. And they came up with a per diem setup, and it allowed people to get new boxcars, new 50-foot boxcars. And it was a colorful era. It was probably the boxcar's last hurrah. A lot of these short lines were getting these FMC built boxcars, and that's what these are. These are FMC, Food Machinery Corporation. And the first one I've got here to show you is the Mopac boxcar. Now, these are combination door boxcars, and these could have been used for a variety of things. A lot of them were used in corrugated, like the cardboard corrugated. Paper service was another popular item that these are used for. And with the dual doors, it just made loading and unloading that much easier. So like I said, the first one we have here is the Mopac. This is good for anybody that's modeling 1974 and forward. Sticking within the 70s, the MD and W. Well, these are cool. And I've always been kind of fascinated with these because it seems to me that white is the worst color to paint freight locomotives, freight cars, trucks, things of that nature, just because they don't stay white for long. They look good about the day they leave the factory. But for whatever logistical reasons, they painted these white with this corporate color green. Now you can tell this is 1970s. You've got the ACI panel on here. And then the interesting thing about Athern is both the HO and the N scale, they're going to have the same printing. It's amazing how they can get the printing that small in 1/160th. So Railbox was the big push in this era. Now you see the slogan off to the just to the right of the door. Next load, any road. It wasn't confined to just the Santa Fe or the Union Pacific. It could be shipped anywhere, anytime, anywhere. And that was kind of a new concept at this point. And TTX, or Railbox as it was known back then, had a fleet of these boxcars. And I remember as a very young person seeing these brand new on the Boston to Maine out of Manchester and Concord, New Hampshire. These were everywhere in the late 70s, all through the 1980s, and you can still see them today, and we'll show you some variants of those. So here's the same boxcar, but this is the 1990s version. A little bit different, logo's a little bit smaller, indicative of the general layout and stenciling of a 1990s car. Of course, one thing that is worth repeating too, a lot of these small short lines in the 70s that got these per diem cars, they didn't always stay on that short line. As time went on, a lot of these cars got snapped up as bargains by railroads like the Burlington Northern, Union Pacific, Santa Fe, and so on. And this one's no different. This is an FMC combination boxcar, but this one is painted in Cascade Green for Burlington Northern and in the Burlington Northern 1990 scheme. And if you're modeling early day BNSF or even current day with a little bit of work, this will still fit on your layout. Now this one is really cool. This is the modern 1990s looking paint. You have your high vis markings on it, and it's faded out. It's a 2010 on up freight car. And this is a prime for grime offering. And the great thing about these is that mustard yellow that Railbox used. It was real vibrant and very colorful when it was new. But after a couple of years in the Southwest and even in the Midwest, they didn't keep that bright yellow for long. They turned kind of a muted yellow, as you see here. And that's what you're getting. You're getting a boxcar that's in decent shape. I mean, it's been maintained, but it's faded out. And, you know, we've talked about it on the program before. Cars like this are earning their keep. They don't have time to be shopped and repainted. So we're offering this one for you in the prime for grime, and it's just waiting for you to put your finishing touches on. So speaking of that, now we just released these about, I think we announced them in N scale a couple of years ago, and I picked up a couple of them for myself. Now it's a little bit outside of my era, but these are the N scale versions. And you can see this is a prime for grime. You can see how the paint has been faded. The boxcar door is like a real gray, not not a black like it used to be. I'll zoom in here. And keep in mind, this is N scale. And this is good for a modern day car. You've got your high vis markings. But see how that's all faded out? These used to be a bright blue and red. Now they're all faded out. Even the trucks, I'll zoom in on these trucks a little bit. Even these trucks are muted for you. They're a dull, grimy black color. This is N scale. Now this one I obviously haven't weathered yet. This is brand new out of the box. Now remember, all the N scale FMCs that you see here, they're going to have steel wheels, they're going to have metal wheel sets, and they're going to have body mount couplers. And I am a huge proponent of body mounted couplers since I do a lot of switching. This layout that you see here, this is a switching layout. It just makes pushing, shoving cars, it's going back and forth so much easier. And of course, it looks a lot more realistic. And the other thing it allows you to do is it allows the freight car body to sit lower, so you don't have that lifted look like some of the older N-scale cars had. So here's two of them together. Different road numbers, slight different details. This one here, you can see, has been patched slightly different than its neighbor beside it. So there's the N scale versions. Here's the HO scale version. This is a later version of the MD and W that we showed earlier. And I mean, same thing. HO scale, you're going to have body mounted couplers, of course. You're going to have metal wheel sets, of course. The benefit of the HO is if your eyes can see just a little bit more. The N scale, especially for some of us that are getting up there, the N scale can be kind of hard to see sometimes. Now, the other thing, too, is both on the HO and the N scale, these are already weighted and ready to go. I know some of you guys out there that operate operations on a self-sustaining, if you will, switching layout. You like to weight your cars a little bit more than an NMRA standard. That's fine. But these come from the factory all ready to go. Really, the only thing you need to do is, just check to make sure your wheel sets are engaged with an NMRA tool. Check your coupler height and weather if you want. Some of these are perfectly fine just taking them out of the box, especially if you're doing a modern day car. But most guys like to put a little bit of dull coat on them and weather them. But these are available for pre-order until next Friday. So that's February 25th. So let's look at some of the questions or comments that you have on these. I'm pretty excited about these because, like I said, I model squarely in the 70s and 80s, and these were everywhere back then. Dave is liking that scheme. Yeah, it is a cool scheme. Richard too. Stephen wants to know, does the sliding door slide open? No, they don't, and there's a reason for that. Now, in the old days, a lot of manufacturers would make these sliding doors, and it was kind of a cool feature. The problem is, even in HO, and more so in N scale, in order for us to develop a car to have opening and closing doors, we would have to oversize some parts of it for the door to fully function correctly without it breaking. We find that it's better to mold the doors with all that detail and have the detail correctly in proportion to everything else on the car, rather than to kind of blow up the proportions of the rails and things of that nature so that the door can fully function. So yeah, these don't have sliding doors or anything like that. Just a few more. Yeah, Jonathan, you're going to definitely want to stick around. There's something you'll want to see later in the show. Yeah, this is a cool era. And like I said, if you like boxcars, like a lot of us do. I mean, for the guys that model the transition era into the 60s, there was a lot of colorful freight cars, box cars especially. You know, New York Central had their pacemaker cars. There was all kinds of bright colors being used. DT&I, Boston and Maine was having blues, brilliant blues, things of that nature. So it was a colorful era. And then that kind of, you know, stuff got old and run down by the 1970s. And the FMCs is just one of the types of per diem cars that were used. And it kind of breathed new life into the box cars. And these colorful box cars came out in the mid 70s and lasted throughout into the 90s. And some of them, like I said, you can still find some of them maybe with new owners now, but still earning their keep. Yeah, Randall has a pretty good comment on the opening doors. I wouldn't want opening doors on my box cars, the ones I have that have those fall off quite a bit if you try opening them. And yeah, that's true. They will do that. That one will not be prime for grime, but the rail box one that I showed you earlier, that one is prime for grime. So these are being sold in HO and N scale as singles, but 3 different road names. So if you want 3 1979 era rail box cars, but with different numbers, you're in luck. And if you're modeling the 70s, you've got the rail box, Minnesota, Dakota, and Western, and Missouri Pacific to choose from. If you're modeling the 90s, you've got Burlington Northern and the later rail box. And if you're modeling modern day, you can kind of mix it up. You can do some weathering on these and mix them up. So these are available again as singles and 3 different road numbers per road. Let's see. See what else we've got. Keenan, I see your announcement. Not tonight, but hold tight. All right. So let's go on to the next bit. And what we have here is something a little bit more modern, more into the 90s. But let's talk pups. So rail fanning in the Midwest in the late 90s into the 2000s, I saw these all over the place, these little 28-foot pups. And so if you're modeling the 90s into the early 2000s, these were just about everywhere. So you can put them, again, kind of like a container. You can put them on your module, your layout. You can put them in your freight depot. You can put them at your trucking area, with a truck, without a truck, on a flat car, whatever you like. They were everywhere. We're offering these in 2 different paint schemes. This is just a standard UPS. And then the UPS with the new slogan, or not new slogan, rather the new logo. This logo came out, I believe we talked about it in a couple of Train Tuesdays ago. I want to say 2002. It's been a while since I read about it. But this, of course, plants it right into the early 2000s. And there, that'll give you an idea of what these guys look like. These are really nicely detailed. These are HO scale, ready to go. Just open up the package, place them on your layout, and you're all set to go. These here, what we're going to be offering these is the 2 paint schemes like I showed you, but you've got a selection of 5 different road numbers per paint scheme. So if you're modeling a UPS depot, we've got you covered. And like I said, you've got until February the 25th to place your pre-orders on any of these items. KBA says, hey, you still see these pups on the Norfolk Southern. There you go. Richard's got a good comment. He says, be the first to include scale UPS wheel well spray skirts. It's a good idea. You know what I'm going to tell you? So we say it every time, Richard. Go to Athern.com. Go to contact us and product suggestions at Athern.com. And that goes straight to our developers. Now remember, Just because you don't get a response doesn't mean we haven't listened or we haven't seen your email. We get plenty of emails on a daily basis, and a lot of the stuff that you see, including some of the things you see tonight as well as the road names, are all because of you guys writing in to tell us what you'd like us to do next. So it's a good idea. So that's my comment to you, is to go ahead and send that comment in. And let's see. Herc is liking those piggyback flats with all different kinds of trailers on them. Joe says he needs 40 of these. So, Joe, you must be working on a UPS depot. Let's see. Yeah, Keenan, I see your comment. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you, Keenan. I don't know. That's something we'd have to talk about offline. Ah, there we go. Jeff has pulled a few of these, he says. So that's good to know. All right. Any new comments? Yeah, Brad, you have me at a disadvantage. I actually covered UPS in the history of this logo about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I've slept since then. So I apologize. Wesley, we'll look into that. We'll look into that. Not in this run, but maybe in a future run. Mr. Ferguson says, what about FedEx trailers? Well, one of the things that a lot of you guys may not realize, or may realize, depending on how long you've been in the hobby, is licensing is a big part of what we do. Now, if you go to our website and look at the page for this, or the PDF for UPS, we actually have a license agreement with UPS. So not only do you benefit from that by getting an accurate representation of a full-scale vehicle, but UPS is protected, and their logos and their colors and all that is protected as well. FedEx is one that maybe the developers are looking into, and maybe it's one of those things about licensing. So I don't know. It's a good idea, but it's possible that either the guys are working on that or they're looking into it. And sometimes licensing has a lot to do with it. Let's see. Jay Olo, I see your question. Yeah, Denver Rio Grande car. And it says to take it back to Grand Trunk Western. It was probably an agreement those railroads had together. A lot of railroads had agreements. Like CP and D&H had agreements. New York Central had agreements with railroads on the Midwest. And of course, let's not forget some of the agreements that actually led to the Burlington Northern. Those railroads all work together in freight and passenger service. So a little bit of research. I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest with you, because there's so many different things out there in the railroad world. But it was probably an agreement they had for that specific type of boxcar. All right. Just going through to see if there's any other questions. So here's a cool idea. I'm going to throw this up here. It's a name you probably recognize if you've seen some reviews. This is James, and he's saying, let's get some late version ES44 ACs and grab a Boy Scout and a Susan Komen license, and then you can make a pink ribbon and a BSA 2010 units. It's a tall order, but it'd definitely be cool. It's a great idea. We'd have to talk to developers and make sure that we've got the right molds to make those specific units, because even though they all look the same from a distance, there's subtle details that do have to be replicated. But yeah, it's a great idea. All right. Yeah, and another thing too is you can always go to our website, Athern.com, and go to the homepage and select new announcements, and you'll see everything that we're talking about here tonight. There, you can even print out the PDF if you want and see all the cool information. Now, one thing too that I want to remind you guys, if you look at our new locomotives, like the GP18s and the GP50s, or anytime we come out with different runs of locomotives, do yourself a favor and look at those PDFs. Our developers spend countless hours doing research, and it may look easy on the surface to just put something together, but it's not. There's a lot of research involved and telling the story of why we've done what we've done and why we're running a certain era. So it's always a great learning experience to see something you may have not known about a specific railroad and a specific set of locomotives. So go check that out. It's over at Athern.com, and just, like I said, hit the banner that says new announcements. All right, I got to put this up here. It's not really about the conversation. Whoops. Yeah. Nothing I can tell you. But it's a cool suggestion. There's something about Milwaukee Road locomotives that, I don't know, they're just a cool locomotive. James, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to put it up here. He says, why don't you take feedback on the artwork like errors on board then? So that is actually something that has happened in the past. Now, last month we ran some artwork for a Norfolk Southern Heritage unit, and there were some inaccuracies. And a lot of you guys who are enthusiasts for that railroad and actually have some information on that specific unit contacted us. So again, our guys put in endless hours of research, and when we put the artwork out there, it is subject to change. And there are times where, for whatever reason, there could be some discrepancies in the artwork. We want you to contact us and we'll make it right. And that way it can be done before the factory actually builds the order. So there have been some times that that's come up, and I appreciate you asking that question. All right, so what do we have next in the lineup? Oh, okay. So something I wanted to share with you tonight is when you send your locomotives in for service, okay, especially our friends that are overseas in Europe and all different parts of outside the continental U.S., before you send your locomotive in for service, please contact us. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use our service email. So if you go to our website, all you got to do is go to our website, go to the main page, hit the contact us, and email us at athernhelp@horizonhobby.com. That's athernhelp@horizonhobby.com. Why do we want to do that for you? Because we realize shipping right now is extremely expensive. And if you ship a locomotive that needs something simple that can be fixed through an email or a phone call with one of our techs, we want to make sure we do it that way and save you a bunch of money on shipping. You know, we've had some instances recently where folks have wanted to order something from us, and they're just small, tiny parts, but to ship it somewhere outside of the continental United States, the shipping was just really, really high. Now, we all have a hobby budget, and we want to maintain that hobby budget. So if your locomotive is acting funny, if it's not doing what it normally does, or it's just not working at all, shoot us an email first, and let's see if we can try to take care of you through email or phone calls before you ship that locomotive. Because like I said, if you're overseas, the last thing you want to do is be without a locomotive for a long time and have to encounter those really high shipping fees. So that's just a service bulletin for you guys tonight, and a good reminder. And yeah, we definitely want to keep that money in the hobby budget. So I wanted to share these pictures to you. The GP9s, they're on their way. Trust me. I know every week I say they're on their way, and you guys are probably getting tired of me saying it, but they are on their way. They did hit some delays, but they will be here. We're looking at about early March. And don't worry, I'm just as impatient as you are, because there's one of the ones I ordered. This is one of our production samples, and posing there in front of the Horizon warehouse. And that'll be up later, probably on Facebook for you guys to look at, along with an old ready to roll boxcar. Now this is cool. This is 1705, and I'm going to geek out a little bit because this is my home road. But 1705 is an interesting unit. It was actually still running around New England with its original as delivered blue, black, and white McGinnis paint scheme right up until about 74. And then 75, it got the Allen Dustin Blue Dip, as they call it. Pretty simple paint scheme. The Boston and Maine blue with the white sill, the white stripe. And Boston and Maine is one of those railroads that if you're modeling it specifically in the 1970s, you really have to do a lot of research. And the developers had to do a lot of research with these, because every single Boston and Maine locomotive in the 1970s was different. And there were just subtle differences. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about 1705 is a couple of things I want to point out is you'll see these beacons on the roof. Well, that's because in the 1970s, Boston and Maine was using this locomotive for MBTA service. And the funny thing about that is there's pictures of some of the Boston and Maine locomotives pulling RDCs, like coaches. So just kind of a cool period in history. There's a whole story as to why they were doing that. Something else, too, is check this out. 1705 had its dynamic brake blister covered up, the fan removed, and just sheeted over. And you really have to pay attention, because even a subtle detail like sheeting over the fan, sometimes Boston and Maine would use a square piece of metal. Sometimes they'd use a circular piece. It just varied. Whatever was in the shop, they put it on there. It was a very Yankee style railroad. They just made do with what they had. And of course, in the 1970s, they were pretty much bankrupt. Fortunately, Allen Dustin pulled them out in the late 70s, but this is kind of the hard knocks era for 1705. And actually, 1705 didn't last in this paint scheme for very long. It actually ended up in its rebuild paint scheme later on, which was a slightly darker blue and a different paint scheme. In fact, I think, pictures are great, but how about if I see if I've got one in the studio? I think I do. Let me minimize that. So yeah, there it is. You can see I've got the beacons on. So there you go. This is kind of a narrow era for this particular locomotive, because like I said, 74 is still running around, and it's very tired for its era, the black and blue and white McGinnis era. So yeah, and this one out of the group of three that development chose, this one has the dynamic brakes completely covered over. The blisters covered, the fans covered. So yeah, cool stuff. I'll go ahead and mute that so it doesn't. So, yeah, those GP9s, look for them to be here. We're hoping about March. All right. So what else we got going on? Well, we got Friends of Athern time. Now, we're hoping to get a email out for you guys so that you can share even more. A couple of you guys have approached myself and some of the guys at Athern with some pictures. And this week I've got a really cool picture. I guess we'll keep the theme at the Northeast. But Joe sent in this picture of his D&H locomotives. These were the Prime for Grime GP39-2s that we announced last year, and they just came into stock. And he did a great job weathering these. These are nice. I'll zoom in a little bit on these. Really nice work here. So it gives you an idea of what these look like. So I want to thank Joe for sending these in. These are great pictures. And they will look awesome next to his D&H Avon Blue and Gray locomotives, and I'm sure he has to go with them. So neat stuff out there. Like I said, we'll be working on that email so that you can email us directly with any pictures that you'd like to share with us. So something else I want to bring up too while I'm thinking of it is we just had some surveys go out. We had one survey that went out for N scale. We had another survey go out for the recent releases of the SD90 Mac H and the SD80 Max. And every once in a while, we just want to get to know what you guys are doing, what you guys are thinking, what you'd like to see us do next. So we definitely get a lot of comments out there, and we appreciate that. But the surveys, we really appreciate it when you fill out those surveys, because that really does help us make the next freight car, the next locomotive, and know that we've got a really good chance that we've made one of your favorites. So I want to appreciate, shout out some recognition for you guys that answered those surveys. All right, what else have we got here tonight? Oh, well, you know what? It's almost the middle of February, and I almost forgot to share with you the Athern Extra. Now, the Athern Extra, if you missed it last month was our very first episode. The Athern Extra is basically everything when we don't have time to fill in with what we talk about on Train Tuesday. And typically what I do is I have a couple of guests join with me who are experts in their field. Last month, I had Tony Cook from White River Publications join me, and I also had Derek Glass from DG Model Works show up with me. And we talked about the different items of January. Now, we're scheduling this for this coming Friday at 7 o'clock, and be sure to watch your social media feeds. You'll see a notification letting you know that show will be going live at that time. And it's a really great show. It's usually about an hour or so, and we talk about the newer stuff. This week, we're going to talk about the GP18s. We're going to talk about the GP50s, as well as some other things. And and it's another way too that you join me in my workshop and see what I'm working on, and see what the guys that are my guests, what they're working on too. So keep an eye out for the Athern Extra. Like I said, you should see a notification in your social media feed probably this week, and we are tentatively planning for this Friday at 7 o'clock p.m. Now, while I'm talking about social media, don't forget there's a couple of different options for you out there. Of course, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're also on, yes, believe it or not, we're on TikTok. I always have to stop and think about that, because TikTok is new for a lot of us out there, but TikTok is another great way of sharing Athern with you guys. So go ahead and check out TikTok. And then while you're at it, if you're looking for videos like this or the extra and you've missed the live version, go on over to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel over there. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So every time a new video drops in there, you can watch it at your leisure. So I appreciate that. Now, I think I've got time for a couple of questions. And while I look for questions, I think I've got something else to show you. So I'm going to do a little bit of back studio switching, if you will, and watch for comments and see what happens. And I try not to wreck anything. So let's see what we've got out there. A lot of guys with comments on what you'd like to see, but we're going to do questions right now. So let me know what you got for questions. Herc, I would love to toss you out a hat, but this is video. I can't do that. But I tell you what, I hope at the next train show I get to meet you, and I would love to give you something. I can't say it would be a hat. Maybe something, Athern. That being said, too, while I'm thinking of it, we are going to be at the Rocky Mountain Train Show coming up in April, and that's just around the corner. So if you're in that area, by all means, come and see me. Athern Fan Podcast. Well, we'll see what we can do. I've got some stuff I'm working on. I'm going to check and see if my stuff behind the camera here is working for you guys. Nothing in the Chicago area as of yet, but keep an eye out. I'm wanting to update our website with a list of shows and stuff that we're going to be at. Now that the pandemic is kind of loosening up, I'm really hoping to start doing a few more shows and seeing you guys. Richard says, where'd he go? I lost him. How about an Athern Horizon road trip? I like that idea. We did RC Fest last year. That was a lot of fun. I didn't get to meet as many of you as I wanted to. All right. I'm going to put my remote down. So while I'm looking at questions, here's something else that's going to be coming to your hobby shop soon. These are the Genesis Trinity covered hoppers. Are these gorgeous or what? Oh my gosh. I'm in trouble. This isn't even in my era, and I'm going to buy these. And really, the video doesn't do it justice. I don't think I can zoom in on these, but remember when we announced these last year, we talked about the BNSF ones, and they've got this extra material to help, bolster the strength and rigidity of the car. And you can't quite see it here. The light isn't that great. I apologize. But these are going to be in stock probably in March. Yes, they are sweet. They are beautiful. This, of course, is an early BNSF, or back when they were known as the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. This is before the swoosh, so this is pre-2005. We are offering the BNSF swoosh paint scheme as well. Yeah, these are contemporary. These are really cool. So if you didn't order these Trinity covered hoppers when we announced them last year, you might want to talk to your hobby shop now. These are not going to last. These are Genesis level, so they're going to have all of the piping detail, the metal etched roof walk, the doors are dependent on grain or pellet. So here you see a grain car. And we also have some of the pellet for like plastic, if I remember right, that were also in this bunch. Well, there you go. Believe we did these in 2 different road numbers each. So yeah, I'm excited about these. Like I said, probably early March, we're going to be seeing these. Let's see what other questions you might have. Yeah, they do. Certainly do. Jeff wants to know any more news on the Genesis AC44s. Yes. Yes. Just not right now. But keep the faith. Winona says, ooh, yes, Athern banners would be cool for the train room. Okay. It's a great idea. If we had a spot on our website for you guys to order those, I think we could make that happen. Christopher wants to know, any brand new tooling announcements coming soon? Yes. No updates that I know of right now on the ST70 Ace Montana Rail Link, Cody. But that could change by next week. All right. So there you have it. I just had to leave that on the screen because it is such a beautiful model. And like I said, those should be here probably about the same time as the GP9s. And watch your Facebook feed too. I've got a selection of the GP9s I'll be putting on the Facebook and Instagram feeds. I already shared the TB&H unit and the UP with its B unit. The Boston to Maine pictures that you saw tonight, those will probably be up tomorrow. And of course, we've got the L&N, we've got the Santa Fe, and of course, my other favorite, CP is up there too in the action red. So those will keep you anticipating until they get here in March. Let's see. What else do we have for questions? We got time for just a few questions, and then we will pull the pin on this episode. So Joe's got an interesting question. Jim, any of a new run of the CF7s? It's funny you mentioned that because if you saw our survey this past week, we're thinking about doing a new N-scale locomotive. And nothing's concrete yet, but we wanted to get a feeler out there to see what you guys that are in N-scale would like to see as a locomotive. And the CF7 was one of them. And I can tell you that the response for an N-scale CF7 was pretty good, pretty solid. So does that mean you'll see one in the future? I don't know. We keep our developers locked up and busy. And yeah, there's just not enough hours in the day for those guys. Genesis CF7, maybe in the future. No plans in the immediate future right now, though. I can tell you that. Frederick, a man after my own heart. More BN locomotives. Or Burlington in Chinese red. Just a thought. Let's see. I'm just kind of going through some of your comments and questions. A GP9Rs. Possibility. It's a possibility. Jamie, check out horizonhobby.com. That's our parent company. And I'm not as familiar with that website as I am the Athern website, but check out horizonhobby.com. You might be in luck. Please make an N-scale locomotive that we can't kill. Well, I will let the developers know that when they come out with a new N-scale locomotive to let me use it for a few months, because if it lasts my trips to train shows and back, then it will last for you. Forrest is looking for an RS3. You know what? It's been a while since we've done an RS3. It's been a little bit. Be cool if we could do an RS3 with sound, because who doesn't like the sound of an Elko burbling in the yard? Herc wants to know, what does Athern do with their old molds? Well, they don't really. They just it's kind of like they just fade away. No, in actuality, what happens is these molds, and many times, they get updated. Sometimes they get updated. As you know, with anything that's in the manufacturing process, they do get worn out after a while. We monitor that closely. I can tell you that that's one of the many jobs that the developers have to look at, is looking at the various molds. And of course, in the old days, it was real simple. In the blue box era, it was pretty simple. You had a couple of parts in a mold to make a boxcar, and that was the end of it. But if you look at something, say, like even just a run-of-the-mill GP38-2, there's so many different molds for that locomotive, because depending on what railroad, the nose might be different or the cab might be different, things like that. So there's all these different molds that make up one locomotive. And what the developers do is they monitor those molds, and they make sure that the quality is up to spec, and they check that occasionally, and they update them as needed. And some molds, like the CF7 and HO that we had many years ago, right now it's kind of in limbo. When we get a chance to look at it further, then we might upgrade it. That's happened in the past too. And something that you're going to want to watch as we go through this year, there's going to be some big changes at Athern. I'm really excited about it, and I think you will be too when you see what's coming out. So we've got new stuff coming out, some old favorites, and some really neat stuff. But that's a good question, and hopefully that answered that for you. All right, so I've got time for one more question, and then we're going to pull the pin on this show. Let me see. I'm trying to pick a good question here. A lot of comments. A lot of requests out there for chopped nose Jeeps. Let's see. Terry, I don't have any news for you on the John Deere licensing. Just know that that's one of the big ones in the licensing bin. Any arrival on the SD40s? I don't have an update for you at this time. Not off the top of my head. All right. So we've got a lot of guys asking for chopped nose first generation Jeeps, GP10s, things of that nature. Like I said, go over to athern.com, contact us, product suggestion, send that in, and let our developers see what you want. And can't always promise that we'll do it, but we get enough requests, there's a pretty good chance that we can. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming on board tonight and spending some time with me. Hopefully you got some modeling done while you're listening to me talk about the great stuff that we are offering this month. Now, remember, you have until next Friday, the 25th, to place your pre-orders and get those pre-orders in with your dealer of your choice. And next week, we will be back with another Train Tuesday. We're going to talk about some exciting roundhouse offerings. And don't forget, look at your social media platforms this week for the announcement of the Athern Extra. We are tentatively looking at Friday at 7, and it's going to be a good time. I think you guys are going to like it. So until next time, everybody out there, be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling, and above all, high greens, everybody. Take care. Good night.